Welcome to ChannelX TV. Delighted to be joined today by Lou from Getida. So welcome, Lou. And for those that don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Fair enough, Chris. A lot of people probably have never heard of me or know me, but my name is Lou Casados. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Go-to-Market and Getida, and it is really my passion, my mission to ensure that we are providing the most customer-centric experience for our current customers, potential clients, when it comes to finding the correct reimbursement provider for you that specializes in FBA reimbursements. Prior to Getida, I've been in the digital commerce and e-commerce space for nearly 7 years now. I've worked with brands, large and small, from 1 to 2 operators to some of the largest names in the business, both on the operational side, advertising side, retail media side, and now reimbursement. So I'm excited to be here with you, and thanks for having me.
So I know there's some news on reimbursements, but I want to come back to that. But before we get to it, there's a couple of things I wanted to speak about. First of all, we managed to snag you as a speaker for the ChannelX Conference for this year. What made you want to speak at the conference? What was exciting about the conference that made you want to be involved?
Yeah, I think, throughout my career, I have seen a lot of brands navigate global expansion in a myriad of ways. Some of them very successful, some of them struggled through it. And it seems to be a hot button issue for a lot of the folks attending the ChannelX Conference this year. So when I saw the topics available, when I saw that there were some really great panelists on there, really wanting to dive into that, it was very motivating for me to share just some of the experiences that I've seen, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I'm hoping people can avoid some of the pitfalls. Outside of that, it looks like an absolutely amazing lineup that you all have managed to come into the show. Everyone's there. I think it's a real testament to not only the cachet that ChannelX has built in Europe and EMEA, but just the rising tide, if you will, of European sellers and their prioritization of digital commerce here in 2024 and going into 2025. So very excited about it. Very much looking forward to it, and we'll see you there. Yeah.
And fascinated with your talk at the conference, which is all about sort of global expansion. And I've got a question. I don't even know if you can answer this question, but I'm going to throw it to you anyway. Do you see more US sellers that want to sell into the UK and Europe, or more European sellers that want to sell into the US? And you're probably one of the few people that has got any idea on this that can share it. But where do you see the expansion going? Which way is it going most?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, just from a per capita situation, there's more sellers in the U.S., right? So the numbers sway that way of folks wanting to break into Europe. I think it's harder, though, for American sellers and American operators to break into Europe because it's difficult to understand the nuance, the localization. It's not just one giant area that everyone buys the same, right? The dynamics are different. The demographics are different.
Even the language.
The language.
Half a dozen at least languages.
Exactly. And very much the same principles that are in the North American market with strong content, strong titles, strong bullet points, right? That's required for success in EMEA, and more so in some cases because you don't have the brand cachet that you may have in the US. So you see a fair amount of that. One thing that I think is really interesting is you see a lot of European sellers wanting to, quote unquote, kind of perfect their motions before going to the US market. And I think that, personally, I think that's a little bit backwards. I think you have a bigger opportunity in the US to try some experimental things, learn some things, get some stronger data, get some more leniency in terms of claim processes in some cases, and just policies from Amazon. And my main take on this is you should go wherever it's responsible for you to go. Meaning, right, do you have the resources to actually roll up a strategy? Do you have the people in-house that understand the operational side of the coin, that can also activate the retail media side, and then can nail the localization for whatever market you're selling in? I think a lot of people really underestimate the impact to revenue that excellence in operations can have, and rely really heavily on the advertising portions of their strategies. But it's just, if you don't dress it up, people won't buy. You can spend all the advertising dollars in the world, but if you can't convert, that's still the problem. But an interesting question, and I think it varies brand to brand.
And I think you've thrown some interesting points here. Like there's so many marketplaces now, but Amazon's the big beast both in the US and in Europe. And you mentioned advertising and retail media on Amazon. And yeah, it's almost a prerequisite for selling on the marketplace nowadays. But there's so many other ways you can optimize listings in your strategy. And in some cases, it's not even a physical optimization. It's okay, I'm going to use FBA or seller fulfilled prime because that's going to help me. Where do you see sellers perhaps failing to put in enough focus? Is it on their images, their titles, just sanity points, or is it on using Amazon logistics or having seller fulfilled prime? Where do you see the big ways of retailers moving the needle?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's again, it differs for the individual seller, right? I think for the most part, most sellers understand the importance of getting edge on your listing and ensuring that in the US at least you're getting 2-day delivery. Now Amazon announced at Amazon Accelerate, their goal is to increase 1-day deliveries by a staggering percentage, and I think move to something like 500 million same-day drone deliveries by the end of the decade, right?
Drones.
So, right.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. The pictures of the drones they have are even more interesting. But apparently they're able to identify dogs. So if you have furry friends, that's good. But outside of just people using Prime, I think there's always some reluctance or skepticism when it comes to using Amazon services, whether it be for the fees, the myriad of fees, I suppose, is the best way of putting it, right? That sellers face. And I think if you can manage those appropriately, you understand inventory performing indexes, you understand strong inventory management, you can mitigate a lot of that. You have a strong reimbursement partner that can maximize profitability with those fees. And that's not the biggest issue. But at the end of the day, what matters most is selling product. It's selling product, giving a phenomenal customer experience, capturing that experience, and then letting the market be able to see what customers are saying about the product. So I think where people oftentimes drop the ball is on some of these operational levers, and really they're small things. Like, for example, maximizing the character count in a title can be a way that's optimizing your listing that most people may not prioritize. Making sure that the brand name is the first thing that pops up in your title. So when it's searchable, it's picking up not only organic ranking, but your paid ranking is increasing with your ad spend as well. Making sure that the bullet points that are in your listings are actionable and problem solving, and really catering to your ideal customer profile in unique ways. And then, of course, leveraging A+ content. Like, you can't just put up a blurry image and expect it to sell because you're throwing a bunch of advertising dollars on it, right? With the myriad of tools that Amazon is giving sellers today, if you're not leveraging video, if you're not leveraging influencer blogs, if you're not leveraging really every single tool available to you in the Amazon ecosystem, you will be beat by a competitor that is. Also, just from an advertising perspective, the brand protection side of things is an area that I see a lot of folks miss, where I think, in the North American market, and this number could be slightly outdated, so forgive me if it's incorrect, but last I checked, only about 23% of product searches actually have a brand name in the title. And when someone comes searching for your brand, that's a high intent customer, right? So you should be owning that sponsored brand product, the first 6 spots in the sponsored product sections, because that's where 80% of clicks are going, right? They're mostly not going below the fold there. So to lose that real estate is potentially losing a sale very easily with some of these ad products used from a conquesting perspective. So I think there's a lot to manage, right? Like, from the 3P side, you have an operation side of the business, advertising side of the business, inventory management side of the business, profitability side, keyword harvesting. I mean, there's so many jobs to do. It can be difficult to get it all done, which is why I think some of this slips through the cracks. That's why it's important to leverage partners and lean on resources and technology when you can.
So I've got a question for you here, which is very controversial, I would say, which is Amazon becoming too big for small businesses? And I'm thinking, when they're saying 1-day prime, that kind of suggests you've got to have product on the East Coast, the West Coast, and the center of America, which means if you're splitting your inventory, there's got to be a lot of inventory there. And I think this also impacts the very larger businesses that are thinking, okay, maybe we'll test Amazon in the US. Can you really do a test and not go full blown and have enough inventory that it can be spread across the whole states?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously, you know, back in 2006 when this all started, it was very much mom and pop, and even up until a couple of years ago, it was very much like the smaller sellers, 57% of sales coming from those smaller 3P sellers. The fees can make the barrier to entry real, right? It's kind of like Amazon before it was a municipal golf course where anybody could come and play, and now it's a country club where you have to pay this rate to get in, and there's ongoing fees and dues in order to maintain your status a bit. So I think it's important to understand, do you have the margins to support growth on the channel? And then are you leveraging the channel in a way that's not just a primary driver of revenue, but also a marketing channel? And I think that's what I tell smaller brands is what you need to think about Amazon is a way to penetrate the market that your brand would never do on their own digital marketing efforts, right? When you think about, I believe 66% of product searches now begin on Amazon in EMEA. 82% of American households have Amazon Prime accounts, right? So it is a staggering number. Hundreds of millions of people basically treat this as a utility. There's nothing that your digital marketing internal efforts could do that would access that many people. So I think it's a miss, and everyone should be there, but you have to do it properly. You have to leverage strategies that ultimately get your customers to come back to your direct sites where you can increase that margin for duplicate purchases, or set up subscribe and save if it's a brand that works for you and is in your profitability. You have to figure out ways to have that continuing revenue coming in from repeating customers and increase LTV, or else it can be a loss leader in some cases, especially with the competitive pricing aspect of Amazon. In terms of the larger brands embracing Amazon, this is something that I could talk about for hours because it dates back to COVID, right? So 2020 happens, the world shuts down, and at that time you had some experts saying that e-com was accelerated by 5-10 years, right? It was a bit hyperbolic, but it's since calmed down a bit, and I think even the most outlandish expert would say it was really like a 2-year acceleration that we saw in the space. But what happened is you had these really large historic retail brands that had never thought about selling on Amazon or making it a priority, forced to embrace this direct consumer channel because that's where customers were. And they saw phenomenal growth with very poor execution, I might add. A lot of people that were standing up some of these really large strategies for large brands, they had no Amazon experience. They had no operational experience. And in a lot of ways, it was like digital marketing managers that were told, go stand up this Amazon store. You know, and they saw 100%.
And the shops were shut. They didn't have any choice.
Exactly, right? They would normally focus on driving traffic into stores and that, but they couldn't. So they said, go stand the store up. It's how we're going to close the gap a little bit. And they saw 100% year-over-year growth, and then 120% year-over-year growth. And then fast forward to 23, 24, and you're still consistently seeing 25, 50, 75% growth on this channel where all of the other line items in your business are staying stagnant or declining. Now it's become really a growth strategy for even large brands. You know, Procter & Gamble, right? You're talking about L'Oreal has deployed a very strong 3P strategy with all of their Luxe brands, which historically has been vendors. So the tide is certainly shifting. I think the margins that they work with these larger companies and the amount of capital they have access to makes it less of a risk for them to take, right? And at the end of the day, they just want to own the market and they want to be there. So I think there's room to play for everybody. Short answer to my already long-winded answer, right? But I think what it comes down to is how are you actually executing on the channel? Because although many people talk about the saturation of Amazon, it's not really saturated with a lot of folks doing it exceptionally well from an operational standpoint and then the advertising standpoint and bringing those two sides of the coin together.
And talking of margins, and I want to get back to Getida now as well and what you do. There's a big change coming to the Amazon claims deadlines in the US, and this speaks directly to what Getida is all about. And I believe it's going down from a relatively generous, I think it was an 18-month period, to a couple of months. Can you just let people know what's going on there and the impact it's going to have on their business and how Getida can help?
Yeah, 100%. So this is, I think for the first time in history, reimbursements are getting a bright line shown on them, right? We've kind of been in the background and people get to it when they can. But essentially, Amazon is changing their reimbursement policy on 2 claim types in the US. So lost warehouse claims, so anything that's lost in an FBA fulfillment center after it's been successfully received by Amazon. Or damaged inventory that's been damaged in Amazon's fulfillment centers. Historically, this has been a claim that had to be identified by the seller, by the brand 100% of the time through reconciliation reports, and then file that claim. And brands did a good job of staying on top of it for the most part if they were aware of it. But the kicker is that they had 18 months to file these claims. Effective October 23rd, that time to file window decreases, as you mentioned, from 18 months to 60 days, right? So a very, very drastic decrease in the time frame. Now, the caveat I will add to that is Amazon is type as an auto-reconciled claim, meaning Amazon will do their due diligence and do their own reconciliations to identify any of these discrepancies that take place. And then anything that they miss will essentially, you'll have 60 days to file instead of the 18 months. Now, I fully anticipate Amazon getting to the point of efficacy to where they are with some of the other 5 claim types that they ought to reimburse for a year from now. Those success rates range from identifying anywhere from 89 to 99% in some cases of actual discrepancies that occur. However, that is not going to be the case right from the jump. We've had at Getida, and I'll explain a little bit more about what we do. But we've had about 133, I believe, customers that were asked to participate in the beta program for this that began in July. And what our internal data is showing us is that Amazon currently is only returning about 20% of what they should be. Yes, that's
about 80% missing of damaged goods that are just lost.
Exactly. Well, they're there, but now you have 60 days to file those instead of the 18 months, right? So again, I don't think this is anything bad Amazon is trying to do maliciously or anything like that. I think just like anything they roll out, it takes time for them to perfect it. A year from now, they'll probably be returning 85 to 90%, right? And then that mitigation and that risk is mitigated. But until they get to that efficacy, you need a partner that's able to keep their eye on this revenue generating activity for you. Because for most brands we work with, they're running lean teams. Even some of the world's largest brands, like I mentioned L'Oreal, that's still a rather lean team that's running that strategy, right? But in reality, you're talking maybe 1 to maybe 5 people for most people running these strategies. All of the lists of things they have to do on a daily basis, and then go back in time and pull up claims. It's just,
I mean, I'm seeing this, Lou, as something that previously a brand could do once a year in the quiet period in maybe June or July or something. But now what you're saying is from October, 60 days from the start of Q4, November, December, we're bang in the middle of Q4, and I've got to be thinking about doing claims. And it's just not going to happen, is it? Unless you've got a partner that's automating and doing it on your behalf.
You're exactly right, Chris. That's it. And even doing it once a year, right? Even that's more diligence than a lot of brands were focusing on it before. And in reality, there's 13 claim types that we service for at Getida, right? Outside of lost inbound, lost warehouse, damaged, remeasurements, wrong F and SKU. There's pick and pack. There's so many different claim types that affect your margins and your bottom lines. And that's why brands choose to partner with us. On average, what we see is anywhere from 1 to 3% of your total FBA revenue is impacted by FBA discrepancies or discrepancies that should be FBA reimbursements anyway, right? So those come from 2 buckets. There's the stuff that Amazon automatically reconciles for you, and then there's the larger bucket that are the manual claims that you have to actually need to identify. Now, you mentioned, in the UK and in Europe specifically, you only have 6 months to file lost inbound claims. So that's when you send in 1,000 units to Amazon, Amazon says we got 800. You're like, no, I know I sent in 1,000, but now you've lost that inventory, and you've really been penalized in two ways. The first penalty is all the money that you've used to source the products, list the products, pay the people to optimize the products, shipping the products in, right? And then B, the actual profitability on the sale. So in this case, unfortunately, that double negative doesn't equal a positive, right? We can't turn it into a positive by working with Getida, because we'll identify those instances, we'll file those claims for you. We'll work with Amazon to provide all the necessary documentation needed to win those claims. And then we can turn that double negative into a positive, because when Amazon reimburses you, they actually reimburse you the full sale price of the good, not just the cost of the good, minus the FBA fees. But it's like capturing the sale without actually making the sale. That's money that you can turn around and reinvest into strategies like Amazon DSP, AMC, CTV, even with some of the new unique ways of advertising that they've recently announced. And really just whether it's that or optimizational enhancements, providing software that helps your team really make the Herculean lift a lot easier, right? When it comes to optimizing product listings, inventory management tools. It's just about how you take this money and reinvest it so you can ultimately hit your profitability goals.
So, Luke, this is fascinating, and I know people are going to be interesting. For those that don't manage to catch you on the conference floor and have missed you, how can they get hold of you? How do they get in touch with Getida?
Yeah, they can email me directly. Very easy email to remember, lou@getida.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I'm happy to connect there and make those connections really meaningful. You can always visit our site directly as well at Getida. Contact us. Very navigable sites. Just click there. Someone will be in contact with you very quickly. We can provide you with an opportunity analysis. We call it the GOA, the Getida Opportunity Analysis. We'll give you two things. We'll give you, the first thing is 18 months of your historical performance in Amazon reimbursements, FBA specific. What have you done? What's been filed? What's outstanding? What's Amazon reconciled? What are your success rates? And then we'll look at your current opportunity for reimbursement. So what's the total amount that we could go after, file claims for, and what does that number look like? So you can start to determine, do I want to tackle this in-house or work with a partner? But we're here for you. Outside of that, I would mention one big differentiator for us. This is all we do. So we are filled with experts around different is FBA reimbursements. So you're never going to get this kind of tip of the spear. Hey, let's get you in reimbursements, and then we'll sell you 20 other tools right around that. Like our mission, our goal, the reason we jump out of bed every morning is to help sellers prioritize and maximize their FBA reimbursements.
And the final thing I'll add in there, which you failed to say, Lou, is that it's a no-win, no-fee. So if you can't do reimbursements to someone, they don't have to pay anything. And even if you do reimbursements, you just take a fee out of the money that's reclaimed that they wouldn't have got anyway. So
yeah, 100%. I may have you come join the sales team, Chris, because that was well said. But 100%, we are pay for performance. We have standardized rates, right? So essentially, if you're doing over $10 million in FBA revenue, you're at 20% of the commission that we would take on any FBA reimbursements. Under that is 25%. But we do, and we are committed to long-term agreements. We want to be your long-term partner where you say, look, I don't want to think about this. I just want to know and trust that someone's going to get this for me. I'm going to get the money showing up in my account, and my team's going to be able to reinvest that. So if you're willing to give us a look for a longer term, like 1 year, for example, that rate comes down to 18%, regardless of size. If you want to go into an even longer term agreement, which a lot of our customers elect to do, a 2-year agreement gets it down to 15%. So we can be extremely affordable, extremely cost effective. And again, it's no risk anyway. It's money that you would have lost if you didn't work with us. But we are happy to be, that long-term partner for you.
Well, Luke, I want to thank you for your time today so much, and really looking forward to connecting in the future.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me, Chris. Great time, and see you in London.